What's going on, YouTube? Phil Birch from Unfun Stuff here. Coming back to you with another video directly related to a question that was asked on my YouTube channel. Before we get started, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, turn your notifications on so you can see all of my super cool, awesome content related to the My Hero Academia collectible card game and some cool matches if you want to as well. But anyway, I got this question right here from Damdiel, which is, if you don't know, Damdiel is a really, really good player. Pretty famous for playing like Tokiyami almost exclusively in most of the events, but he did show up with Eraserhead to the Vegas regional, and yeah, he did pretty well as well. But anyway, Damdiel asked, what I'm curious about is deck selection for any particular event. Like, how do you decide what to take? Why are Rebellion top players not playing Froppy? And that is honestly an excellent question. Why don't all of the top players in the My Hero Academia collectible card game, a game without a diversity rule, just show up with the best deck? Or just, all the same deck, right? Why is there not just a big think tank of every single good player in the game just going, hey, this is what we all should be playing, and this is what we are all going to be doing? And I think that the biggest reason that there is such a divergent amongst all of the big players really is stylistic choices and like what they are having success with in their own meta, mixed with a little bit of personal bias on who their favorite characters tend to be. So like in the example that you gave there, or that Damdo gave, it's why is not everybody trying to go with Froppy? Well, the way Froppy plays the game has a particular playstyle, right? Like it has a lot of interaction within your own cards, but you're not necessarily interacting with your opponent's cards all the time. You are playing big strings of really cool attacks, but that's not necessarily how everybody wants to be playing the game, right? There are people who like to play defensive decks. There are people who like to play combo-oriented decks. There are people who like to play much faster aggro decks to win on turn 2 and stuff like that. And maybe Froppy doesn't necessarily fit all of the play styles of the top players of the game. I'd say another thing that really differs, or that really turns it away from how other card games necessarily approach their game plans, right? Like every deck in Yu-Gi-Oh, say, plays the same, right? You're playing a million cards during your turn. You're making your big board. You're making a big monster, guys, and you're just trying to get to a state where your opponent can't win the game. But every single deck is doing that in the exact same sort of way, right? In My Hero Academia and Universes, there is a lot more of a variance to what happens in a particular game. You have the cards you draw on a turn. You draw up to your hand size every turn. You make control checks, so you're not necessarily going to see every single one of your cards in a given game, because there's always a chance that you get rid of all of them through playing other cards. There's symbol restriction. You don't get to just play your whatever you want. You don't get to just play a deck that's full of 50 of the best cards plus the best character. There's restrictions on that. There's deck building pretty much costs, right? You can't just have a deck with 50 attacks. You can't just have a deck with all foundations. There's just so many factors that go into deck building, and I think that primarily is the reason why we don't have such a well-defined, established one deck meta, but we do always have a pretty well-defined, not necessarily written in stone, 5 to 6 deck meta, where that's still a healthy format in most games, and it's a healthy format in My Hero Academia, but it does allow the top players, the best players in the game, to have variance on what it is they think is their playstyle particularly, and what their favorite things to do within the game are. Some people love, like I said, some people like playing defense and stuff like that, so they're going to gravitate more towards the life decks. They're going to gravitate more towards Kirishima. They're going to gravitate more towards Momo, where they love blocking, right? They love blocking. Blocking is their favorite thing in the entire world, and they want to mostly punish a backswing. So these decks are going to wait for your opponent to go super heavily in, And if they don't kill you, they're going to have like an immense board state advantage because you're going to have to tap cards to play cards. And they're going to be like, well, you're overcommitted, you're overextended, let's go in. But then there's people who want to just play like super aggro decks. There's people who want to play like the Tokiyamis and the fourth kinds of the world, where it doesn't really matter to them what you are doing for the first couple of turns because their game plan on turn 2 and turn 3 is just to attack, just to send it. And I'm talking mostly dumb bird, not necessarily smart bird. Smart bird's like the Tim Keefe build where you have a lot of answers, you have a lot of direct point and like interactions, point and click interactions, right? Where you are touching your opponent's cards a little bit more. But we do have like dumb bird, which is like orange card, blue card bird, where you're playing just every sugar rush in the entire world. All your attacks, it doesn't matter what they do. They just want stats. Yeah, so those decks are like really looking to just get that turn 2, turn 3 kills so that they can pretty much disregard what their opponent has built onto the board. They don't care because it's not late enough in the game for you to stop them with it, with what you have built. And then there's people who want to play combos. People want to play Giro decks. These Giro decks are awesome because they get to establish really cool long strings of neat, awesome attacks. And you have a very low percentage of doing anything like of failing the big cards because you get to rearrange your checks, right? That's why we have the staff strike decks. That's why we have these flash Giro decks, stuff like that, where you get to play really cool, neat strings, and like hope your opponent doesn't have interactions for it, or play cards to mitigate those interactions. And that's like I think the biggest thing for me is it's play style, it's how big the meta tends to be, and like it's just personal preference, really, right? There's always going to be somebody who's trying to be on top of the meta, and that person is going to be like very, very well situated to win most of these. That person will be situated to win the event if they have the next big thing, right? Because if their deck can deal with, say, the Kirishima field that they might see in the next event because the Kirishima just won, and has a positive matchup against like Asui's or something like that, then they are well positioned to just power through a lot of the meta, a lot of the big decks, a lot of the decks that you should expect to see coming up. And since like there's not necessarily like the established meta, there's a defined meta. It's not established. It's hard to say what could win at any given time, what could be the best option at any given time. That's why in my weekly series, How to Get Away with Meta, I just try to tell you how to interact with the strong decks. I'm not going to necessarily tell you that the deck is the best deck because it is hard at any given time to say that, right? Like tier lists are going to shift so often in this game just because of what is being played, what isn't being played, like what can beat the things that are being played. So that like it's going to heavily weigh into people's perceptions of the game. Plus, some people just like playing their characters, right? Like say you just really like Mei Hatsume in the show, and I think that's Garrett's big reasoning for playing Mei anyway, right? Like Mei is a strong character. Mei fits Garrett's playstyle. Mei's a late game character. Garrett loves playing late game. But he also had mentioned that like he just really likes her in the show. And sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes all you need is for people who are dedicated and good at the game to just be like, I really enjoy this character in the show. I really just am going to play it no matter what. And I'm just going to put in the effort to make it good. That happens, man. So anyway, I guess in conclusion, I know this isn't going to be a super long video because like it's just me with like conjecture. The way I personally choose to play decks is I do like playing a strong deck. I like to play a game plan where I feel like I'm more in control. I don't like my opponent to have very much fun usually when I'm playing. So a deck like Kirishima does suit me very well. And a deck like Tokiyami was suiting me very well as well because, yes, they are two different sides of the coin, right? Like, Kirishima plays great defense. Tokiyami plays great offense. But both of them have the same key point where you really don't want your opponent to have any fun or interact with you. You want to do your thing very well. And whether that be play great defense so that your opponent feels suffocated by just having to attack into a bunch of blocks and half damage on your character, or you being the aggressor and throwing 5 to 6 attacks on turn 2 to turn 3 and just like stats, right? Like those are two different things where your opponent still doesn't get to interact very much. But yeah, the way I go into choosing is, I mean, honestly, I pick my play style is like not letting my opponent have very much fun. I like talk to a ton of people. I always am asking questions. I think that's a huge thing for figuring out the meta and figuring out why you can beat and cannot beat stuff in the meta. I ask a million questions, and then you know, I settle on a deck and then I just grind it and hope it works. I very rarely change my deck last minute unless things are going absolutely catastrophic. But yeah, thanks again for watching, guys. I hopefully that answers your question, Damdiel. I would love to get more questions like this that are super thought provoking, that really spur on great videos. I think because really, honestly, I'm making the content for you guys. I'm not making it for me. I kind of have my own idea of what's going on and what isn't going on. So yeah, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments, guys. I love it when you guys comment on the videos. It's one of my favorite things to get comments so I can respond to you guys. Then I get to pick some of my favorites and make videos off of them. Obviously, we've had a couple of these type of videos before. But yeah, thanks again, guys. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit notifications, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.